This is why you want to have out a sheet of paper, understanding checkout. Joey, that's not going to help you prepare for your test, so don't complain when you don't do well. Joey, head up, bud. All right, you're making your choice. I'm trying to help you learn and grow. So yes, some formulas I will give to you, and I will tell you which formulas I will give to you, but I will also say this. Geometry as a whole is very small when it comes, or there's very few formulas. In fact, there's really just area and volume, and we'll see how much of that we get to. Most of geometry is understanding how concepts work in geometric space. We'll talk about cus. We'll briefly talk about a dot plot and a few other things in here. Okay, so yes, how to determine IQR versus standard deviation. All right, I think these are all things I plan on talking about. So first things first, let me pull up this. All right, so we are going to go over the understanding check first, and then we're going to look at lesson 3 to get better at calculating statistics, analyzing data, and using the calculator. So don't forget, it doesn't matter where you were on the understanding check, what matters is moving forward, okay? Oh, final thing about the understanding check, okay? When a whole group of 4 has very similar answers, guys, it's obvious that, or a group 2 of those 4 have similar answers, it's very obvious that someone was looking at someone else's sheet of paper. I'm not stupid. It happened multiple times on this. During tests, the desks will be more broken up, and I will be more actively watching during a test. But when I see that, I'm going to note it, and I'm going to say something. And the people I write on their piece of paper, hey, you need to come talk to me, we're going to have a conversation. And I will either be contacting one of those sets of parents or both, depending on if someone fesses up or not. And I usually can tell pretty quickly who it was because I know who's actively working and in class every day and making sense out of things. It's not hard to figure out. And I'm not going to do anything other than show the scans of these things that I currently have to both sets of parents and say, I'm not telling you which one was cheating because I don't fully know, but this is the evidence that I have. It's exactly the same language, it's exactly the same work, whatever. It's not hard to figure out. Just don't do it. If you're afraid that someone might be cheating off you, cover up your paper with the rubric that we have, things like that, okay? Cheating doesn't help. You're capable of amazing things. When you walk into my class every day, I'm going to greet you by telling you hello because you are a human being who deserves to be recognized by their name. But also, you deserve to recognize yourself as being a capable human being. And I want you to come in with that attitude, I want you to come in with that mindset, but you also need to put in the work. I asked yesterday, and I think all of 4 of us raised our hands, maybe 5, for having studied for the understanding check. I hope that increases over this weekend before that test. So, we're not here Monday, so I'll go ahead and tell you, I do not know 100% if it's going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday. What determines that is me talking with another colleague and seeing where they are, if they've started the next unit or not. Plan for that test to be Tuesday. That's what I will say. I will send out an email this weekend to both you and your parents to let you know if it's actually going to be on Wednesday. But right now, you should plan for the test to be Tuesday. It's never going to hurt for you to start to study early. We'll probably just jump right into the test. That's what today is for, is the review. Okay? So this is again why we're going over the understanding check and reviewing and practicing after that. So I don't want to rush it because I do want to answer questions, but I need you to be actively involved, actively engaged to ask the questions that you need to ask. I'm here to help support you, but you need to be actively involved in those conversations. So it's not going to help you if you don't have your understanding check out to take notes on. You literally complained on there that you didn't know how to do this, and then you don't have it out to take notes on it. Yes, Joey.
I don't know I'm supposed to study what I've been doing, but I can't finish do the understanding check.
Well, we're about to go over the understanding check, so you could take some notes that could help you study. And we've only had 2 lessons that we really had for this entire unit. You can go read through your notes on those 2 lessons. So again, there's 2 parts to studying. One, there's understanding how and why things work, which is where your justification comes in, and then there's the actual process of doing it. And so we'll talk through some of those things right now. Yes, Trent?
Did we fill in the one that we missed since we're going over it?
It's yours. I've already made scans of it. I have a record of how you did. So, you even, whether you missed it, left it blank, whether you even did it almost perfectly, add extra detail in there so that you have improved understanding what's happening, right? This is your understanding check for you to learn from. So you might want a separate sheet of paper out, because I know some of us wrote a whole lot, right? Nathan wrote paragraphs, so it filled it up, but there's still things that he needs to learn to improve his understanding. So, just because you write a lot doesn't mean it's everything, but learn from your mistakes. Don't forget, what scores are going to reveal that you have clear evidence of understanding or clear, consistent, and convincing evidence? What numbers are you looking for? 3s and 4s, right? The plus just means a higher level of it. If you see a 2 there, that's a limited evidence of understanding. A 2, just a plain 2, would mean that you have it partially correct, whereas a 2 plus means that you have a correct answer, but you have missing details, you have concepts that you misunderstood, or a major procedural error, things like that. So pay attention to what those numbers mean. A 1 on its own, right? The solution response is not valid, you got it wrong, but there's at least a decent start to justifying it. So I'm trying to give you feedback on your level of understanding, and then I literally write you feedback on there. So, I'm not going to spend forever on number 1. Here are the responses I developed for number 1. What are your questions? Look at yours, let's see what things you might want to write down. Yes, Maddie.
Would you do a histogram on number 1?
That's right. Sir. That's right. No, sir. Maddie?
Would you do a histogram on number 1?
I can't hear you because Ezra is still doing that.
Would you do a histogram on number 1?
Could you do a histogram on number 1? Yes, 100%, right? But remember, the question is what would be best. When you have just a few data points, and notice that's the language you want to use, it's just a few data points or data values, then you're going to go with the dot plot, right? When it's a small number of data points, it's easy to draw a dot on there. With that histogram, you have to think about what are the bins going to be. Remember, that's how wide the bar is, stuff like that. So I just go with the dot plot. If you're talking about a class, in this class, when everyone's here, there's only 30 of us. Can you put 30 dots on a number line pretty easily? Ezra. No, dude. Step outside and blow your nose if you need to, but we're not picking our nose in the middle of class. You're in high school, man. Okay. Please do note. Stop. Please do note that we're trying to compare heights, right? So box and whisker plots. And this is a language thing, and this is something I did mess up on this understanding check. If you notice, I didn't put histograms anywhere on the understanding check. That will be on your test. So make sure you study histograms. You know how to label the x-axis, you know how to label the y-axis and draw the bars, things like that, okay? But histograms, right? We have our bins here, and we have a lot of students, so I'm going with the histogram. Okay, questions about this? Joey, did you take notes, or did you just look at me that whole time?
Does that say 2 bins?
Well, it's 2 different details. That's not your class. Why are you looking at that class? I told you to blow your nose, and then you couldn't come back into class.
What did it say? Oh, yeah.
What's what say?
Besides the arrow, beside 2.
So, bins. Remember, the bin is how wide that grouping is. Yes, sir, Jay.
What is that say? What it says? Because Jack wants to.
Oh, because Jack
Because Jake wants to compare the
Oh,
heights.
this
It is easiest with box and whisker plots.
Oh, okay.
Compare, yeah, CO. Okay. By the way, guys, don't write every single detail because we got to go, but make notes about the important things, right? We're comparing data, box and whisker plots. I will also point this out. This is what I meant to talk about a second ago. Does anyone remember the other reason why you would want a box and whisker plot besides just comparing data?
It's easier.
It doesn't actually give you more specific, and so that's one of the things we aware of. Dot plots, so hold on one second, Jamie, and I'll let you answer. Dot plots give the most specific data because you literally see every data point. Okay? I asked about box and whisker plots. Jamie.
Is the box and whisker plot where you like compare the medians most of the time?
Well, you can see the median very clearly in the box and whisker plot, but that is not necessarily why we would want to use the box and whisker plot. Hold on. I'm not asking for number two, or for part B. I'm just saying in general, what's another reason you would want a box and whisker plot? But that's exactly what B says.
It's easier.
So what does the box and whisker plot tell me? Hey Joey, stop pitching a fit, dude. I never said you were wrong, did I?
I'm trying to answer, but you're just ignoring me.
I didn't ignore you. What I'm looking for is not what you said. So I didn't want to say, no, you're wrong. I was trying to get us to the right idea. I heard you, bud. I'm trying to help you learn. Focus. Okay, so it's not just that it's easier, because all of them are easy enough. That's what you said, right? It's easier?
I was saying the box and whisker plot was easier than dot plot.
See, maybe, but I would say that a box and whisker plot takes more work because you have to identify what the minimum is, what the Q1 is, what the median is. That takes more work than just putting a dot there. Okay? So what does this tell us? Like when I talk about Q1 right here, what does that tell me? Okay, below it, from the minimum up to there is what percent of our data? 25%. What's between Q1 and the median? 25%. What's between the median and Q3?
25%.
And what's between Q3 and the maximum? So what is the box and whisker plot great for? It's great for looking at percents of the data, right? So the median, right, separates the bottom 50% of data from the top 50%, right? The IQR, right, the interquartile range shows me what the middle 50% of data is, things like that. Okay, Jamie, did you have your hand up for something?
No, I just said that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple times in class. But I also know like some people miss school. Remember guys, this is why I do film the things in class, and if you go and look at the videos, I title it with whatever's covered in class. Say again. Okay. I title it with the major ideas. So the days that we cover box plots, the video literally says box plots as a part of the title. Okay? So be aware of that.
I keep forgetting about that too.
Yeah, the videos are there. I got the tutoring hours like whoa, so I'm here to help you be successful. Make sure you put in the time and effort, right? Because at the end of the day, every single one of you is capable. That doesn't mean we're all going to make hundreds. Doesn't mean we're all going to make 90s, because some people do put in more work than others. Some people pick it up more naturally than others, and that's okay. But every single one of you is capable for high levels of learning. We just got to learn from our mistakes. We got to grow and get better. Okay. Number 2, this one caused some difficulty. One of the things I do want to point out, Part A. So we're going to talk all about Part B for sure. Part A. So many of you got the dot plot correct, but you only got a 1+. So many of you made one small mistake on the dot plot, and so you got a 0-. Because what did most of y'all not even think about doing for Part A here? Well, you needed a title, but that's not the real issue. What do I need with every single answer?
An explanation?
Say it again, Ethan.
An explanation?
An explanation, justification. A quick statement like this. So, like, how did you get this dot plot? That's the question. How do you get a dot plot? Anybody?
You put dots on a plot.
Okay, you put dots on the graph, but how do you know where to put the dots?
From
The data.
Okay, but how from the data? We got to be more clear with our language. Look at this. 1 dot for each value. Stacking when a value happens more than once. That is clear evidence of understanding that, hey, when I have a 1, I put a dot on the 1, right? 1 dot for each value. And then we stack them when that value shows up more than once. Explain why. Yes, create that dot plot. I will say that probably wouldn't be a 4 plus. It'd probably be a 4 because I should have said 1 dot for each value at that value. But that's what we want to recognize, is that there's a reason why we do these things. And if you understand that reason and can explain it, can you probably do a dot plot every single time?
I don't know.
If you can explain your ideas, that means you really understand it and you can do it over and over and over again. You might make a small mistake every now and then, but 1 dot for each value. Stacking when a value happens more than once. That's it. That's what you're doing for a dot plot. For those of y'all that did forget, make sure you label or title your graphs. Books read per person.
Sorry.
You're not.
I am.
Then you wouldn't keep doing it. If you're actually sorry, you fix your behavior.
I am sorry.
Then show me with your actions. So, what are your questions about the dot plot, different things like that? We'll move to part B in a second.
Can you show us one more time how to do IQR?
That we're about to do part B.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just asking about part A.
Okay. We're good.
Okay. So, I will remind you, first off, let's get some practice using the calculators, because can't the calculators give us a whole lot of the information for part B? Yes. So, what I want you to do is go ahead and pick up a calculator. What kind of page do you need to create? List and spreadsheets. Create a list and spreadsheets page. Put that data in there. Maybe title it books, but create a list and spreadsheets page.
Title it book.
I would, yeah, because it's books read, right? So title the column books. Remember, you need a list of spreadsheets. So get escape out of the scratch pad. Create a new document. There's your list of spreadsheets. Typed in books. Hit enter. Hey Joey, don't hit the calculator. If you're having trouble, let me know. And then put your values in, right? So there's, I think, 11 values there. So you have to go to a new document. See how I can calmly hit it or press the button and it works. You need to list in spreadsheets number 4. So I think you were gone when we did this yesterday, right? You didn't see this yesterday?
I don't even remember. My
Yeah.
memory, like how I forgot to come during the wedding call.
Okay. BOOKS, we're going to title it books, then put the values through here, right? So type your values in. Okay? Yes, sir. Go to documents, do a new document. New, number 1. You can just hit the number 1, don't save it. And then you want number 4, list of spreadsheets. Alright, you got your values in there, you got to calculate, nicely done. Work with Kyla. Yeah, guys, if you get your values in there, go ahead and do the stat calculations we did yesterday to get the different values. So, Wesley, you got to title it first. So title it books. Okay. We'll go over this more. I need you trying the calculator stuff because you need to learn how to do this. Ethan, we're going to continue working on this. You need to learn how to do the calculator because you weren't here yesterday. So I need you to follow directions. So what the issue is, see how the cursor's inside? Hit enter, so it's no longer in there.
Just graph. This is what I did.
Okay? If you were not here yesterday, work with your group members to try to make sure that everyone knows how to do this. One puts the type of people's books there. So put it at the very top. Y'all good? Y'all good on the calculations? Already got done? Lillian, all y'all good on the calculations? Okay.
but you get enough one.
Alright. Who needs me to show them how to go through the calculations process? Really quick question. Have y'all talked to any, actually, group 5, y'all don't have anybody in your group who has this down, right? Alright, let's quickly go through it. Alright, I'm going to be very quick. Please follow along. I need a new document. Alright, listen spreadsheets, books. What's the first value? 3.
3, so 7, 8, 1, 2, 8, 11, 17, 3,
Was it 3 again?
yeah,
And then
8.
8. So you need to title that column, you need your values typed in there, and then we talked about it a little bit, even if you weren't here yesterday, what button are you always going to press to do any operations? Menu, okay? So once I go to menu, I need to go to statistics. We're trying to calculate statistics. Okay? Under statistics, stat calculations. Make sure you go to stat calculations, not stat test. Stat test gives you things called p-values and helps you do something called hypothesis testing that you can study in AP stats. Something you're not studying right now, so don't sweat it. Stat calculations, and how many variables do we have? One variable, okay? So just do number of list 1, don't ever do more than one list, okay? The X list, that's my variable. I'm just going to click to the right, or I type in my variable, but I'm going to click to the right, select books, hit enter, and I'm good to go. Actually, yes, the next unit we're going to study does 2 variable statistics. It's called bivariate data. Okay,
Oh my god.
so I will come by, please hear me very clearly. If you don't know how to do the calculator part right now, I will come by and help you during small group time later. Let me know during that time that you need me to help you with the calculator part. Make sense? So I will help you, but wait till that small group time. Now, I want to point this out. We see the mean, we see the standard deviation, we see what is the min Q1, median Q3, and max called again? 5 number summary. Literally, how many numbers are there? 5, so it's called a 5-number summary. And so we see those values right away. So min of 1, Q1 of 3, median of 7, Q3 of 8, and a max of 11. Now, hear me very clearly on this. You need those values to be able to do the later part of this question, right? Yes. You need those values to be able to do part D as well. So if you can't get the answers on your own, can you use the calculator to at least try to do later parts? Yes. You just won't show me as high a level of understanding, right? And so that's what we want to be aware of, is I'm looking for your level of understanding. So if you can do part of it, do part of it. Could you also do some work and then check yourself in the calculator to make sure you have your answers right? Yes? You can do that. Now hear me very clearly on this. Your work and your answers should match up. So if you realize, man, I made a mistake, go with the calculator answers and just tell me, this work, I don't know where my work went wrong, I used the calculator to get these answers. Cool. That tells me that you understand it even more because you were able to identify when you made a mistake. Now let's learn how to actually get these values. Okay. So, first things first, right? We have the minimum Q1, Q3, maximum median. What I would highly recommend is use your dot plot to identify those values. Because what do I mean by a minimum? The lowest value, the least amount, Ezra. The least amount. Boom, there's my least amount, 1. That is the furthest to the left. Jaden, you taking notes on this to learn? Come on, man. It's hard when you don't have that pencil in your hand. Okay? I'll help you with the small group with the calculator part, but focus on this right now. the minimum is Q1, or the minimum is 1, and what is the maximum on the graph? 11. Those should be the ones we never get wrong, 1 and 11. Now, should I look for the quartiles or the median next? The median, remember, separates it in the bottom half and top half. The median is going to be easier to identify than the quartiles themselves. Okay? So, one of the things that I did, well, first off, what do we mean by median? We already talked about it.
The middle.
The middle, but that means it separates the,
50%.
50%.
and one thing I want to clarify is top 50% and bottom 50% of the data. I saw quite a few people just saying 5.5, which 5.5 is in between 1 and 11, right? But that's not the median of the data. How many data points are below 5.5?
4,
4. How many are above?
5, 6, 7.
7. Is that splitting the data in half?
No.
No. And so I made a note to myself, hey, there's 11 data points. And so if I have 11 data points, if I do 5, 1 in the middle, and then 5 again, is that separating it in half? So I just counted it out like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. Or actually, I think I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Regardless of which point you choose, what is the median? Wait. 1, oh, because I need the 6th one. Wow, sorry guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? I need 5 above, and I need 5 below. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 below. That's how I did that. What are your questions about identifying that median? You can also list the numbers out in order if you want, but it's just easier to identify it. When you identify your median, make sure half the data points are below, half the data points are above. That's it. Questions from there? Yes, Maddie?
When we do, are we gonna have to do that on the fifth?
Yes.
Like, we'll have to like separate it?
Well, when you say separate, what do you mean? Like
after-
show it like that? Well, here's the thing. I'm going to ask you for the median, right? I'm going to ask you to justify your answer, right? Is that a way to justify your answer? Okay. That's what I would say. That's evidence for why the median is 7. That's the thing to consider. Now, from there, how many data points are below the median? 5 of them. So if I take 5 and I split it up, I would go 2, 1, and 2. You see how the 1 would be in the middle of those 5 data points? So 1, 2, 3. That third is my first quartile. Notice there's now 2 above it before the median. So Q1 is 3.
And what does Q1 stand for? Like,
First quartile, remember it separates the bottom 25% of data from that top 75% of data. Because I'm identifying the quartile. So Q1, median, and Q3. Well, so I looked at the fact, and I don't know why you're talking when I'm trying to teach you how to do this, when you struggle, some of you struggle with this. If I know that if this is my median, right, that means there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points below it. And so I need to split that 5 up so I can identify the first quartile, 2, 1, and 2, right? Or you could ignore this and just look at those data points and say, I need 2 points above it and 2 points below the first quartile, right? So there's my 2 below, and here's my 2 above. I need the same amount on either side. Okay? So I ignore the median. I only look at what's the lower half of the data. Because remember, that's what the first quartile does. If there's that 50%, the first quartile splits that 50% into half again. Right? 25 and 25. Now, 1 second, Maddie. So there's that. And then I need to do the same thing to get Q3. And so there's 2 points below Q3 and 2 points above Q3. So I'm splitting that top half of data in half again. Okay, Maddie, what's your question?
You said you would have 5 on each side, but on the left side.
So actually, okay, so here's what you would kind of, if I didn't circle this one, let's say I circled this, because I think that's what's throwing you off. Notice I'm splitting the data here and here, right? So I have these 5 points that are less than, it can also equal that point. So these 5 over here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over there. So when you have some values that are the same, you would use one of them as the median, and then the other one would go with one of the sections. And that just comes from counting it. So remember how it's 11, so I need 5 and 5 on either side. So I let these 5 go together, and I let these 5 go together. Okay, let me show this then. If that's uncomfortable for you, write out your numbers in order. 1, 2, 3, 2 3s actually, 7, 7, 8, 8, 8, 10, 11. So I'm going to go until I get to the middle. You see how that 7 splits that half versus this half? See how that 7 now is in the bottom half. And that's what I was just doing on the dot plot. And if you like this better, notice there's the middle of the bottom half. And here's the middle of the top half.
So can I use this strategy on the test instead of?
You can use either one. As long as you know how to explain what the quartiles are and what the median is, I'm good.
If we do it that way, we don't have to label it.
I mean, if you do it this way, you just have to put the numbers in order to identify what number separates the bottom half from the top half.
So we have to label it Q1, Q2, or
Yeah, you would want to label it as part of your evidence, Q1, median, Q3, right? Like you would want to probably justify even a little bit. Why is this the median? Separates the bottom half from top half. Why is this Q1? In the bottom half, it separates the bottom 25 and the next 25, right? So you'd want to show that. What are your questions about doing the 5-number summary by hand? Okay. Yes, Nathan.
So for Q1 and Q3 and how you got them, it's the pattern that really separates them. Because there's 2, then there's the 1.
Yes, there's a pattern, but I feel like you're making that too complicated. This is the median, so I take it out and I ignore it. Look at the bottom half. I need something that separates those numbers in half. See how that splits?
Keep the middle in there.
Right. That's a better way to explain it. It's you're finding the middle every time. Wesley, paying attention? Looks like you and Jamie were distracting each other. Okay. So IQR. Can I move to the IQR and lower fence and upper fence? I think that's what got us the most difficulty. So IQR. If you actually say what what that is standing for, it makes it way easier to understand. Interquartile range. Don't forget, what is range? Not interquartile range, but just range.
Spread. Well, I don't know. Spread.
Something with spread. Something with spread.
Something to do with spread.
The maximum minus minimum.
The way we calculate is the maximum minus minimum. It's how far away the max and min are from each other, right? So for a range, we just do max minus min. Well, I'm not just looking at the range, I'm looking at the interquartile range, which is the range between the what? Q1 and Q3. So it's the range in between the quartiles. Well,
Why not just make it the median?
not necessarily, because range is how far they are apart. Right? I'm not asking for, because here's the thing, listen Joey, this is important, it's a good question. The median separates the bottom half of data points from the top half of data points. But what the IQR is finding is how far apart are the quartiles? How far is it from Q1 all the way over to Q3? The interquartile range is a distance. It's a distance. Okay? So, in a similar way to max minus min, when it's interquartile range, what is the maximum quartile? Jamie? What's the maximum quartile? What do y'all think? Would Q3 be the maximum quartile? I mean, is it the higher quartile?
Yeah,
Yes.
back row.
So if I want the interquartile range, the higher quartile is Q3. And now I need the minimum for that interquartile range, which would be,
Q1.
and so I need to subtract. That's interquartile range. IQR is always Q3 minus Q1, just like max minus min. And so you'll notice right here where it says IQR, I literally wrote out equals Q3 minus Q1 equals 8 minus 3 equals 5. That's my evidence, that's my justification for why the IQR is 5. I showed the algebraic work for it. I showed IQR equals Q3 minus Q1. So IQR, I substituted in those values. There's my IQR. That's it. Jaden, you got all that written down? All of it? You understand it? No questions? Okay. Any questions about IQR before I continue to the fences? So what? It's not the range, it's the interquartile range. Because if you look, how the range would be from the minimum to the maximum. How far is it from 1 to 11? It's 10, right? They're 10 away. So it's not the range, it's only the distance from the lower quartile up to the upper quartile. So interquartile range. So to find a fence, which some of us did this pretty well, for a lower fence, the lower fence is based on, well, first off, fences are based on the quartiles. If you need to write that down, make that note. Fences are based on the quartiles. Fences are based on the quartiles. Fences are based on the quartiles.
Where do we put this?
This would be still on number 2. In that space where it's talking about IQR and lower fence and upper fence.
I don't see that.
Joey, your pencil is right next to it, bud.
I'm just an idiot.
Huh?
I'm just an idiot.
No, you're not an idiot, bud. You're
My
just
grade
not,
says otherwise.
your grade doesn't define you, and you need to get over that attitude. Your grade can change based on how much effort you put into it.
I'm putting effort into it and it's not making much difference.
Joey, you came to tutoring one time, and when you left, you felt more comfortable. Stop being down on
That's
yourself.
all, I was just going over the first understanding check. All that's pointless now.
So then come in more frequently, and we'll get you caught up.
I can only come one day a week. And by the time we're done with that, it's just going over the stuff that we did last week,
Joey,
which
I
makes
need
it
you to step
pointless.
out. Joey, I need you to step outside, collect yourself, and come back in when you calm down. Joey, step outside until you calm down. And we can talk about it after class if we need to. So, lower fence. Fences are based on the quartiles. Which quartile is the lower quartile?
3.
Q1.
I think Q3 is up here, isn't it? The lower one is Q1. Remember, that's the first quartile or lower quartile. So a lower fence is based on Q1. And then from there, it's always the same. It's either plus or it's minus 1.5 times the IQR. If it's lower, I want to go lower. What operation would go lower? Subtraction. So Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. So Q1 is 3 minus 1.5 times the IQR of 5. What lower fence does that give me? Pick up the calculator and check it out. So the lower fence is that first quartile, the lower quartile, and then we're going to go lower. So minus 1.5 times the IQR. Negative 4.5. Okay, can someone check? Make sure Emily's got that right. Okay, we're not worried about what's in your teeth. I need you doing calculations.
4.5.
Negative 4.5. A couple of you gotten that now? Why is it 1.5? Statisticians decided that one day. I don't know the exact reason beyond that's how we do it. I don't know what the reasoning was for that. I mean, you could, but that wouldn't be the right way to determine if it's an outlier. Okay? These are the fences to determine if it's an outlier. So I'll point out, so when we think about outliers, we're going to go beyond that value. Remember, this is again lower, so we want to go even lower than this. Is there anything lower than negative 4.5? No. So are there any lower outliers?
No.
So you would say no, well, this is going to come up with C, but this is going to be a part of C, right? No values below lower fence. So no lower outliers. If you had a value below that negative 4.5, you would have an outlier. Now, you can't have a negative number of books read, so in this context, it wasn't possible. So we can use the same exact logic for an upper fence. You can memorize all this, but if you understand what it means, it's going to make your life a lot easier. An upper fence, again, it's based on, fences are based on what ideas? Quartiles. So which fence, or which quartile would go with an upper fence? Q3, that's the upper quartile, the third quartile. But we want to go beyond that, so we're going to add or subtract. Add, right? It's upper. We want to go above it. We want to keep going, so we're going to add. And it's still going to be 1.5 times the IQR. Find out what that upper fence is. So substitute those values in, figure out what that upper fence is.
It would look funny until you start walking out like that's all his face.
Nobody showed me that.
Jordan's funny the whole time.
Nobody showed me on the bitch. On the bitch.
How you could throw me?
I don't know.
Nobody showed me that. Say her mom right
He was something over there while he was doing
Andrew.
You won't believe what
Yes.
I heard it was African. You got another name.
Yeah, there is
No way. Don't you got like a big ass name?
Which is a very scary thing. Not really so much of a
I'm not really a fan of Rice's statue.
What happened?
He was okay with
Alright,
the greatest one.
so what's the upper fence? 15.5. So 8 plus 1.5 times 5, 15.5. Do we have any number of books read beyond, meaning above that upper quartile? No. So do we have any upper outliers? No. So what are your questions about calculating fences? Okay. So, what I will point out is, if you need to use the calculator to get the 5-number summary, can you do that and then get the IQR and the lower fence and upper fence and still show me some evidence of your understanding?
Yes.
Yes. Hopefully you know how to get the quartiles, hopefully you know how to get the median, but if you don't, use the calculator for that, then find the interquartile range and the rest of it. Notice, I made a simple statement here. No values beyond the fences, below the lower fence or above the upper fence, so no outliers. More is not always better. If you can simply explain it, recognizing, hey, there's no outliers because there's nothing outside the fences, that's a strong understanding. But that's why there's no outliers. No values beyond the fences, below the lower fence, or above the upper fence, so no outliers. There's your rep. You can't have a pencil in hand taking notes when you're doing that. But
Sorry.
I didn't ask you to be sorry. I asked you to pick up a pencil and get to taking notes on your understanding check. But the understanding check's right in front of you. Okay. I do also want to point this out. Looking at, do you have a question or you just? Okay. I do want to point this out right here with part D. I didn't do a lot in terms of justification. This wouldn't be a level 4 even, it'd probably be a 3D plus. But notice how I did a simple thing of identifying this line right here as my minimum. This line is my first quartile. I identified the median, the third quartile, and the maximum. Does that give some evidence that you understand what the values in that box plot mean? Yes. It's simple things like that that show me how well you really understand what those values are. Thomas, you getting that?
Yeah.
Okay. What are your questions about number 2 at this point before we continue? Yes, Nathan.
I'm still kind of lost on like 15.5 not being like an outlier.
That's not a data value, bud. That's the upper fence. It's an outlier if it's beyond the fence. That's the fence. If we had a number above that, then we would have an outlier. So like if you, over here, look at your number of books, or look on your sheet. Do you have anything that's more than 15.5?
No, sir.
So that's why there's no outliers. Remember, the fences are what keep. I didn't know this was blanket class. I thought it was geometry class. Geometry with data analysis. Okay. So that's what it is. Remember, the fences are what keep the data in, and if anything goes outside of that fence, it's an outlier. It's gone off the reservation. Right?
Who is that with that point?
Say again. Then it would not be an outlier. That's the fence. It's on the fence. And I thank you for saying please stop. Let's try to do it more respectfully. Jaden, come on, man. You're too old for this. You're in high school. Okay? Alright. Oh, and also again, title your graphs. Okay? Please note that extra level of detail that I showed here. Again, I'm probably not going to count B against you with this number 3 if you struggle with it because you didn't have the formula. But notice the simple detail of I wrote out the formula. The mean is equal to the sum of x divided by n equals, I showed the sum there, divided it all by 7. I didn't split it up into multiple parts. I saw a lot of people who showed the sum but didn't show division by n. Keep it together. It makes your job easier. Make sure that you don't make mistakes.
Okay, so I didn't do 17 divided by 10, divided by 7, I just did 10.
I know. How'd you score? A what? A 4 plus? That should not have been a 4 plus. I made a mistake then. So that's why it was a 3D plus. right? So it really probably even should have been a 3D, but that's what you should be showing me to get to a 4 plus. Okay? Those are the details I'm looking for. The details that you know what the formula is, that you know that this means the sum of x, that this means the sample size. Now I will say that's probably even closer to maybe a 4 than a 4 plus. Really, actually, to give me a quick note of what this means, hey, add all the values. A quick note that, hey, this is how many values there are. That's a 4 plus, right? Going above and beyond, not just giving the bare details. Okay? And then standard deviation. Those who created this table were much more successful than those who did not.
I got a 4 plus 2.
Right? Notice I showed each of my values. Then I showed that value minus the mean. 7 minus 10 is negative 3. 8 minus 10 is negative 2. And then what I do to each of those values?
You add them all together.
Not yet. I'm talking about what did I do to these deviations to get these?
You squared them.
I squared them. Right? I had to square them to make them all positive. Then I found my sum. Notice how I even wrote the sum of x minus x bar squared is 34. Substituted everything in and used the calculator. One of the biggest mistakes students made was they forgot to take the square root. Make sure you do that. Okay. What's going on? You taking notes to learn how to do this better? Okay. So, at this point, two things I do want to point out. I saw some students writing S equals like this, and I saw some writing it like this. Which one is correct and which one is wrong?
The one at the bottom?
The bottom
Top
one's
one's
correct.
what, Thomas? Okay, so what's the issue with the top one? Let's work on that language. It's not that we're squaring the 34. Okay, do you see how I was pointing to Jamie? It's okay. Jamie, do you want to add anything to that?
You would square 34 and then square 36.
Well, be careful. That's not a square. That's a
Square root.
square root. And we need to be careful. This is only taking the square root of 34, where we definitely need to be taking the square root of 34 divided by 6. That's what goes together. And also, we're not just doing 34 divided by 6. If you had a 5.4, if you got 5.4 or something like that, then 5.6, then you forgot to take the square root. Okay? So if you had a 5.6 at the end of this, you forgot to take the square root. Make sure you take that square root. And again, I'll have the formula up, so make sure you get that. What are your questions about A and B? Yes, ma'am.
How about the base?
Where's your square root? And then, so notice, it should have been this with the square root, but does that make, like you didn't have, you had pieces in each spot. And also that was supposed to be n minus 1. So like you had ideas all there, but not all together. Okay. Now, because we hadn't done it much, I didn't include it on this understanding check, but here is one thing that will be on your test. So I want you all to work in your small groups for just a second on this. I want you to work in your small groups to interpret what this value means. So interpret what that standard deviation means. Talk with your small group. Let's take 4 minutes or so. Do your best to figure out what that standard deviation value means. So, did you do the sum of all your squares? Well, you did, so we divide by 7 to get 10, right? But remember, the next part to get standard deviation, see how I did that table where I had the values? Then I did the difference between the value and the mean, right? So 7 minus that mean of 10 is -3. Then I had to square each of them and then add them all together. That's
One day I'll wear shorts too.
Let's talk about your standard deviation.
Why you imagining?
What do we come up with? What'd you say? Huh? Okay. This is your group right here.
Could be.
Y'all need to, if you're not sure how to answer this question, you need to go back to find what is the definition. That'll tell you. I earned a 1. What does it say next to the 1? No, what does it say for 1 over there? On the roof. Not valid. But there was a decent start to justify the response. What did I say right next to full cut? Center, unusual aspects, shape, spread. Can you talk about all 4 of those?
I think so.
No!
I think I
What's the data set? Number 1. This is restaurant B is skewed to the right, while restaurant A is. So you did the shape, exactly. You did the shape. You didn't do the center. You didn't do unusual aspects. You didn't do spread.
It's like
Did y'all come up with just a deviation?
it's like your parents' house.
I asked you to interpret what the standard deviation is. Guys, if y'all are struggling with interpreting the standard deviation, you might need to go look through your notes about what the definition of standard deviation is. The interpretation is based on the definition.
The amount of minutes is
But the mean is still 10. So what is a typical value that those data points deviate from? 2.38. Close, you're getting better. Good. Base it more tightly on what that definition is, but you're getting there. Have you all found your definition of standard deviation? Jaden? Nothing, that's the issue. Have you got your notebook out to try to look up what the definition of standard deviation is? Have you got your notes out? Or have you just copied off what's on the board? You have a brain that is capable of amazing thinking. But you just wait on me to give you the answers. That doesn't apply in my class. Huh? I asked y'all to interpret the standard deviation that we just calculated. Okay? You need to stop using the word it and stuff like that. Be more specific. That value what?
average of
It's already calculated.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, we're going to go over this right now, but I need y'all to stop waiting on me. I need, when I give you instructions, to get started right away. It shouldn't be 5 minutes later that someone looks at me and says, wait, what are we supposed to be doing again? That shouldn't happen, right? So, we need to be aware that I need you to start right away. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I have a slide at the end to tell you what's on the test, but one of the more unorthodox things that I do on tests is there is always 3 parts to a test. There's the short answer, there's a non-calculator portion, and a calculator portion. You need to be aware of that. A